Have you ever felt like you just need a roadmap to navigate the sheer volume of global news out there? Cut through all the noise and get straight to what truly matters and, well, why it matters. Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we unpack the sources you share with us, trying to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight. Think of us as your expert guides, helping you understand the what, and maybe more importantly, the so what from all this information. Today we're embarking on a pretty crucial journey across the current global landscape. We'll be diving deep into these powerful economic shifts that are really redefining international relations. We'll also soar through some new scientific discoveries, things that challenge our understanding of the universe. And we'll examine some crucial human stories too, the ones that remind us of our resilience but also our vulnerabilities. It's shaping up to be a day packed with a really complex interplay of power, progress, and some pretty pressing challenges that honestly affect us all.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here, I think, is how events that seem totally separate, disparate, they often connect. They paint a much larger picture of our world right now. I mean, from what's happening literally on Mars to the shifts in global markets down here, the threads are just much more intertwined than you might think at first glance. We're seeing nations actively trying to sort of redefine their places in the world, not just economically, but culturally, scientifically, too. And these moves, well, they have ripple effects we're only just starting to really grasp.
Absolutely. So let's start with that big picture maybe. Because the global economic landscape, it feels like it's undergoing some truly seismic shifts right now, especially when you look at tariffs, currencies, and just who's competing with whom. Our sources really paint a clear picture of a world kind of moving towards new financial architectures.
Indeed, they do. And the first major thread we can pull on is this intensifying effort by the BRICS nations.
Right, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa.
Exactly. They're intensifying efforts to reduce their reliance on those traditional Western financial systems. And this push, it's gained significant momentum, particularly, in the wake of the 2022 conflict in Ukraine and the economic sanctions that followed.
So it's a direct response to those sanctions, but it sounds like it also maybe accelerated a trend that was already there.
That's a good way to put it. Russian Finance Minister Anton Silanov, he was speaking at the 17th BRICS Summit down in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And he really hammered this point home. He highlighted how the group's increasingly using national currencies for their bilateral trade.
Okay, but beyond the headlines, how deep does this shift really go? I mean, are we seeing a genuine threat to dollar dominance? Or is it more like strategic hedging against future sanctions? What are the sort of long-term implications here?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? And it's probably a bit of both. The shift to national currencies and trade, like Russia and China using mostly the ruble and yuan, that's undeniably significant. But the real insight isn't just the volume, maybe, but the message it sends. It's like a declaration of intent, to forge a new financial architecture, one that's less susceptible to being weaponized politically. You see major Russian banks, for example, actively moving away from the SWIFT system.
Right, the big global messaging network for banks, dominated by the West historically.
Exactly. And SWIFT facilitates trillions in cross-border transactions daily, so moving away is a big step. The reasoning is pretty strategic. Shield BRICS economies from things like transaction suspensions or currency reserve freezes.
Like what happened to Russia, right, where a huge chunk of their dollar and euro reserves got frozen.
Precisely. That experience was a real wake-up call for many. However, building genuine alternatives to SWIFT, or truly challenging the dollar's role as the world's main reserve currency, that takes more than just technology. It needs deep, long-standing trust, solid legal frameworks, and frankly, vast liquidity, the kind the dollar has built up over decades. So it's definitely a marathon, not a sprint, towards a truly multipolar financial world.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about building an alternative system, like a financial fortress maybe, that offers more autonomy. And BRICS isn't just standing still. It's actually expanding its reach and influence, isn't it?
That's correct. The original group, Brazil, Russia, India, China, founded back in 2009, South Africa joined in 2010. But much more recently, and this is significant, Egypt, Ethiopia, the UAE, and Indonesia have all become full members. That expansion alone tells you something about the growing global interest and maybe influence beyond the traditional economic powers. And beyond that, they've even introduced this new partner country status.
Oh, okay. So broadening the network even further?
Right. Fostering direct banking ties within the bloc, aiming to stabilize and grow trade, independent of that traditional Western financial plumbing. It's clearly an alliance looking for greater self-sufficiency and Mutual support.
And, well, not everyone is thrilled about this growing bloc, are they?
Yeah.
Especially when you hear some of the rhetoric from, say, the U.S. We saw a pretty sharp counter from Brazil's president.
Yes, Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, often just called Lula. He really didn't hold back. He sharply criticized former U.S. President Donald Trump's recent tariff threats against BRICS nations, called the comments irresponsible and outdated. Lula's stance was pretty unequivocal. He asserted that nations should act with sovereignty, mutual respect, rejecting what he called imperialistic behavior.
Strong words.
Very. He made it clear BRICS nations won't just tolerate economic threats and, they might well reciprocate with tariffs if needed. He really emphasized their vision for a multipolar world order. It's a clear statement that these nations aren't content to just play by the old rules.
That is a strong statement. And it seems like that feeling is shared by other new BRICS partners, too. They're presenting a kind of united front against what they see as economic pressure.
Absolutely. Bolivian President Luis Arce Bolivia is a new BRICS partner country in South America. He echoed that sentiment. Moving away from U.S. dollar dependence, he even framed the current global situation as a kind of confrontation between a declining Western bloc and a rising BRICS bloc.
Wow, okay, declining West, rising BRICS. That really underscores the power shift perception.
It does. It highlights the perceived power shift and, the ideological underpinnings of this whole economic realignment.
So it's not just about money, is it? It's also about clashing geopolitical ideologies and trying to reimagine global power structures. And India seems to be stepping up to shape the future vision for this bloc, particularly for the global south.
Precisely. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced that when India takes the chair in 2026, BRICS will be sort of redefined, their new focus, building resilience and innovation for cooperation and sustainability, specifically for the global south.
Interesting acronym potential there.
Maybe. But it signals a desire to move beyond just economic cooperation into broader development, tech sharing, sustainability goals with a people-centric approach. Positioning BRICS as a kind of champion for developing nations, it's a shift from being just an economic bloc to potentially a more comprehensive development partnership.
It's fascinating how the U.S. approach to trade, especially these tariff announcements, kind of plays directly into that BRICS narrative of seeking financial independence. We've seen former President Trump make some pretty significant moves recently on that front.
Yes, and it's striking how these two things, the BRICS push and the U.S. tariffs, are deeply interconnected, even if they seem separate. Former President Trump recently announced new tariffs, pretty hefty ones, 25% to 40% on imports from 14 countries. And the list is interesting because it includes not just strategic rivals, but also close allies like Japan and South Korea.
Right, plus countries like Vietnam, India, Malaysia, even South Africa, Tunisia. It's a wide net.
A very wide net. Also, Kazakhstan, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Indonesia, Serbia, Bangladesh, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar, set to begin August 1st. Now, from a right-leaning perspective, the argument is that Trump aims to recalibrate U.S. trade policy, the idea being that foreign nations have taken unfair advantage of the U.S. market for too long.
So the argument is protectionism, basically. Protect U.S. interests, bring jobs back.
Essentially, yes. Supporters believe these actions are necessary to protect U.S. interests and that aggressive tariffs are a tool to get fairer trade deals.
Okay, and how did the markets react? Because usually when Trump talks tariffs, Wall Street gets nervous. But was it straightforward this time?
Well, initially, yes, the news definitely rattled global markets. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plummeted, 400 points? S&P 500 future slipped too. Interestingly, the U.S. dollar actually gained strength.
A flight to safety, maybe?
Yeah.
Amidst the uncertainty.
That's the thinking. Investors seeking stability in the dollar. They were clearly unsettled by the ongoing uncertainty surrounding trade policies and tariff threats. But, and this is key, S&P 500 futures did rebound later. It seems investors, maybe optimistically, started betting Trump's tariffs will end up lower than threatened.
The classic negotiation tactic perception.
Exactly. So a mix of initial alarm, then maybe some hopeful speculation. The market seems somewhat accustomed to this kind of rhetoric.
And internationally. Beyond the market fluctuations, how did the targeted countries react? Because these tariffs affect real industries, real people.
Definitely. Japan, for instance, expressed concerns over the impact on its domestic industries and employment. They vow to protect them. Japan's a huge trading partner, so this could hit sectors like cars, electronics hard. China, already in the thick of trade tensions with the U.S., warned Trump about the tariffs and threatened retaliation on supply chain deals.
Setting a deadline even.
Yes, August 12th, they said, to reach an agreement or face further U.S. retaliation. So they're signaling they're ready to escalate if need be, and South Africa formally responded too. They criticized the 30% tariff aimed at them as a misrepresentation of actual trade data.
Hmm.
Their president, Cyril Ramaphosa, argued that, look, 77% of U.S. goods already get duty-free access to South Africa, where their average tariff is only 7.6%.
Hmm. And doesn't this also hit South Africa particularly hard because of AGA?
It does. It significantly impacts South Africa as the largest beneficiary of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGO.
Could you just quickly remind us what AGA is and why it's so important for a country like South Africa?
Sure. AGOA is a U.S. trade program, the African Growth and Opportunity Act. It gives eligible sub-Saharan African countries duty-free access to the U.S. market for thousands of products. For South Africa, it's been really crucial for their export strategy. Think automotive parts, textiles, agriculture, lots of sectors benefit. It was designed to boost economic growth in Africa through trade, not just aid.
So these tariffs aren't just an economic hit. They kind of challenge this long-standing trade relationship meant to support development.
Exactly. It introduces instability into a program that was really intended for stability and growth. It undermines that a bit.
So proponents might argue tariffs protect U.S. jobs, but you really see the potential ripple effects here. Global supply chains, consumer prices, even these development agreements. It feels like these two big stories, BRICS pushing for de-dollarization and Trump's tariff threats, they're not separate at all. They almost reinforce each other, pushing toward this reconfigured global economic order.
They absolutely are intertwined. These trade disputes, they create an environment where nations, especially those in BRICS, feel an even stronger need to diversify their economic partners and to reduce their dependence on the U.S. dollar and Western financial systems. It just accelerates that move towards the multipolar world order Lula talked about. It's a direct challenge, really, to the financial systems that have underpinned global trade for decades.
And the world is reacting. Industries are definitely feeling the pressure, adapting. Or not. Let's move on to some of those business insights, because we're seeing how different markets and industries are trying to navigate this, well, challenging environment. It's a real mix out there.
It really is. For instance, kind of bucking the trend, Singaporeans seem to be defying the global luxury downturn. They're actually increasing their spending on high-end goods.
Really. While the rest of the world tightens its belt.
Apparently so. It suggests a really strong consumer market there, at least in that segment, even with global economic headwinds, maybe a resilient high net worth group, or just unique local market factors insulating them.
That's fascinating. But not everyone's having that kind of luxury boom. The car industry, particularly luxury cars, seems to be hitting some bumps, especially in China.
That's right. German luxury car maker Porsche reported a 6% drop in global deliveries overall. But the really stark number was a 28% plunge in China.
Wow, 28%. And China was their biggest market, wasn't it?
Historically, yes. And the main reason cited is intense competition from domestic Chinese brands. Think Xiaomi, BYD, Chery. These companies have significantly faster electric vehicle development cycles. Much faster.
How much faster are we talking?
Get this. Some Chinese automakers can apparently go from concept to production in as little as 18 months.
18 months compared to
Maybe 5.4 years for many foreign automakers, including Porsche.
Wow, that is a massive difference. That agility must be a huge advantage, especially with EVs evolving so quickly.
It's enormous. It lets them pivot quickly to local tastes, integrate new tech faster. The pressure is so intense that Porsche is actually closing dealerships in China now.
Closing dealerships, that signals a major rethink of their China strategy.
Definitely. A big reevaluation in what was, not long ago, a booming market for them.
And it's not just cars. Tech hardware, especially for AI, is seeing just incredible demand, almost too much.
Yes. NVIDIA's B200 GPUs, these are the super powerful chips needed for advanced AI. They're selling faster than the company can make them. It's creating real supply challenges. Even though NVIDIA is ramping up production, the demand is huge, especially from what are called sovereign AI projects.
Sovereign AI projects, what exactly does that mean?
It refers to nations, governments explicitly investing in and building their own independent AI capabilities and infrastructure.
Oh, so like reducing reliance on foreign tech companies for this critical AI stuff.
Precisely. It's increasingly seen as a matter of national security economic competitiveness, control over sensitive data. It's like a new digital arms race in a way. It just reflects the massive ongoing investment in AI infrastructure globally and the strategic importance countries are placing on AI autonomy.
And innovation isn't just happening at the level of NVIDIA and giant tech companies. It's happening at smaller scales too, right? Especially in clean energy, sometimes with surprising twists.
Exactly right. Take Tulum Energy, a clean energy startup. They apparently rediscovered a forgotten hydrogen technology, and they successfully raised, $27 million in funding.
Forgotten hydrogen tech. Sounds intriguing.
It does, and it highlights the growing interest and significant investment flowing into sustainable energy solutions. Countries are looking hard for alternatives to fossil fuels, trying to hit those carbon neutrality goals. Hydrogen holds a lot of promise there.
And then there's this deep-sea mining. It sounds like something from science fiction, but it's real and potentially controversial.
Very real and definitely ambitious. We're hearing about a Canadian company, apparently with U.S. government backing, that's poised to potentially sidestep UN laws to start deep-sea mining.
Mining what exactly? On the ocean floor?
Battery-grade minerals, things like lithium, cobalt, nickel, the stuff that's essential for EV batteries, smartphones, all our modern tech.
And the goal is to find new sources because land supplies are running low.
That's the aim, replenish diminishing land supplies. But this really highlights a crucial tension, doesn't it? The race for resources, which we need for technological progress, often clashes head-on with environmental and ethical concerns.
Because these deep-sea ecosystems are fragile, right?
Yeah.
And largely unexplored.
Exactly. We're talking about potentially disrupting ecosystems that could take centuries, maybe millennia, to recover if they ever do. It's a classic progress versus preservation dilemma, but supercharged by this geopolitical competition for resource security.
Okay, so it's clear. These economic shifts, trade disputes, they're profoundly reshaping global power dynamics, driving innovation. But these shifts rarely happen smoothly, do they? Unfortunately, we often see the human cost of this friction in conflicts and flashpoints around the world. Let's turn our attention now, sadly, to the ongoing conflict in Israel and Gaza.
Yes, the situation there remains incredibly difficult. The latest round of truce talks between Israel and Hamas seems to have ended without any significant progress, which signals just ongoing challenges in reaching any kind of ceasefire agreement. And this stalemate just keeps exacerbating a really severe humanitarian crisis on the ground, particularly in the Gaza Strip, that narrow Palestinian territory on the Mediterranean coast.
And the reports coming out, the human toll is just heartbreaking. It's almost hard to process sometimes.
It is truly devastating. Our sources describe, for instance, an Israeli strike on a clinic in Gaza. It was sheltering displaced Palestinians. Several people were killed.
And they found children's toys in the rubble.
Yes, just gut-wrenching details like that. Another report mentioned at least 15 people killed in an Israeli airstrike on a school, also sheltering Palestinians. There's a quote from a Palestinian poet, Adel al-Ramadi from Gaza. He reflects on the collective struggle and the deep emotional turmoil. And he asks the world simply, where am I to go? A question that just captures the immense displacement and despair felt by so many there right now.
And amidst this tragedy, we're hearing about controversial proposals and political stances that seem to make a long-term solution even harder to imagine.
They do. The Israeli defense minister proposed a highly controversial plan to relocate Gaza's population into a large camp in Rafah.
Rafah, that's the city in southern Gaza, right on the border with Egypt.
That's the one. Critics immediately labeled this plan a blueprint for crimes against humanity. They described this proposed humanitarian city as basically an internment camp for all Palestinians in Gaza. Adding to the complexity, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has explicitly rejected the possibility of a fully independent Palestinian state.
He cited national security concerns.
Yes, particularly as the war enters its 21st month. He stated Israel would need to retain overarching security control, warning against militant groups like Hamas, and referencing the October 7th attack as justification for that control.
So that's a pretty clear rejection of the traditional two-state solution framework from Netanyahu's perspective. What about the international response? Diplomacy? Criticism?
It's mixed, as you'd expect. U.S. President Donald Trump, while hosting Netanyahu at the White House, expressed some optimism about the ceasefire talks, suggesting a path forward. And, interestingly, Netanyahu nominated Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize during that meeting.
But elsewhere, the criticism is strong.
Very strong in some quarters. Former Irish MEP Mick Wallace, for example, harshly criticized the European Union. He accused EU leaders, like Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, of directly enabling what he flat-out called the genocide of Palestinians.
How so? By aligning with Israel's military campaign.
Yes, and by ignoring, in his view, international law and civilian casualties. He specifically called out Germany in Central Europe as the top EU arms supplier to Israel. And the UK also chimed in, threatening further action against Israel if the Gaza ceasefire proposal fails. A British diplomat also criticized the US-backed aid distribution mechanism in Gaza, calling it ineffective. So a lot of international friction and disagreement on how to handle this.
And it's not just contained to Israel and Gaza, is it? We're seeing signs of regional escalation, too.
That's right. The Israeli military reportedly struck a key Hamas figure, but this time in Tripoli, a city in northern Lebanon.
Okay, Lebanon. That definitely raises tensions across the wider Middle East.
It absolutely does. It shows how easily this conflict can spill over borders, creating a much more volatile regional dynamic.
Let's shift now to another major conflict zone, Ukraine. Here, too, we're seeing evolving military support and significant diplomatic fallout. Ukraine is still heavily reliant on aid, especially from Germany, it seems.
Yes, very much so. Ukraine has submitted what's described as a confidential request to Germany, a large European nation asking for billions of euros worth of advanced weaponry. This secret list reportedly includes things like 1,500 medium-range and 500 short-range missiles for their German-made Iris-T air defense systems.
Those are the sophisticated mobile air defense systems, right?
Yeah.
Crucial against Russian attacks.
Exactly. So getting more missiles for them is critical. The list also apparently includes 1,200 mine-protected vehicles and 1,000 GPS jammers, among other things. And this comes as Germany has already pledged, I think, $5 billion for long-range weapons production in Ukraine, and reportedly talked to the U.S. about buying Patriot systems for Ukraine.
And speaking of the U.S., the military aid picture there is also changing again. Former President Trump made some new statements that seem like a shift from some of his previous positions.
That's a notable development. Former President Trump announced the U.S. will resume weapons shipments to Ukraine. This came just a week after the Pentagon had briefly paused deliveries, citing concerns about diminishing U.S. stockpiles.
And did he specify what kind of aid?
Yes, specifically, Trump apparently pledged to send 10 Patriot missile interceptors to Ukraine after a phone call with President Zelensky. And just for context, each one of those Patriot missiles costs around $4 million, and they usually fire them in pairs for a single intercept.
Wow, so that's $8 million per intercept, potentially. That really highlights the immense cost of modern air defense.
It really does. Trump also apparently encouraged Germany to chip in more, maybe provide one of its own Patriot batteries, and hinted at a broader review of foreign military assistance overall.
And what about Trump's view on the conflict itself? He previously talked about ending it quickly. Does he sound more, maybe, realistic now?
It seems so. He admitted the conflict has been more challenging than he initially anticipated. That's quite a shift from earlier confidence. He also criticized Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying he's not being serious about ending the war.
Did he mention consequences? Sanctions?
He hinted at new sanctions, but mostly emphasized a strategy of unpredictability. He even compared it to a recent U.S. strike on an Iranian nuclear facility. He claimed the U.S. aid, which he put at roughly $300 billion, was essential. But he also suggested the U.S. under President Biden might have overextended its military support.
Okay, so a perspective that aid is needed, but maybe the scale and cost need reevaluation. That sounds like a familiar right-leaning argument on foreign spending.
It does fit that framework, yes. A need for support, but questions about the cost and long-term sustainability.
And how is Russia reacting to all this Western aid flowing back in, especially the U.S. resuming shipments?
Well, Russian officials, including President Putin and Foreign Minister Lavrov, they're sticking to their line. They continue to assert that this flow of Western arms just exacerbates the war and hampers peace efforts. They see it as direct involvement in the conflict.
A stance they've held pretty much since the start.
Yes, arguing it prolongs the fighting and pushes a diplomatic solution further away.
Now, beyond the military hardware, there are these other fronts opening up in Ukraine, aren't there? Cultural, legal, especially around language.
Yes, and this is a really contentious issue, hitting right at the heart of national identity. Ukraine's education ombudsman, Nadezhda Lishchik, made a recommendation. She advised teachers in Ukrainian schools to interact with students solely in Ukrainian, even suggesting they should act as if they do not understand any other language, including Russian.
Wow, act like they don't understand Russian. That's quite a directive.
It is. The goal is to encourage the adoption of Ukrainian as the state language. This whole Ukrainization policy has been a core government initiative since the big political shifts back in 2014 in Kyiv, Ukraine's capital. The stated aim is strengthening national identity, reducing Russian cultural influence.
But Russian is still widely spoken, isn't it? Especially informally.
It is, particularly, it seems, among younger people on platforms like TikTok, maybe more so than older users on Facebook. Russia, predictably, has slammed this policy. They call it discriminatory and even a legislative extermination of Russian culture. They see it as an attempt to erase Russian language and heritage in Ukraine.
And legally, Ukraine is taking action too, sentencing Russian officials, even if they're not there.
Yes, symbolic but significant moves. Ukrainian courts sentenced 12 Russian lawmakers, including some famous former athletes like Vladislav Tretiak and Nikolai Velyev, to 15 years in prison, in absentia.
In absentia, meaning they're not actually there to serve the sentence.
Correct. They remain in Russia. The charges relate to supporting actions Ukraine sees as violating its territorial integrity, like recognizing the independence of Donetsk and Lugansk, those regions in eastern Ukraine, with Russian backing. So largely symbolic sentences, but they underscore Ukraine's firm legal stance on its own sovereignty.
And wrapping up the Ukraine situation, NATO seems to be seriously ramping up its preparedness, maybe even beyond Cold War level.
That's a striking development, yeah. It reflects heightened concerns across Europe. The port of Rotterdam in the Netherlands, which is Europe's biggest seaport, is actively preparing to support NATO military operations, just in case there's a conflict with Russia.
How are they preparing?
They're planning a special dock, a kai, specifically for NATO supply ships, and they're conducting regular military drills there. Reports suggest this level of preparedness exceeds even that seen during the Cold War. It shows a much more assertive, proactive NATO stance, preparing for contingencies that, frankly, many thought were history.
Let's widen our lens again and look at some other geopolitical dynamics playing out globally. The European Central Bank issued a pretty stark warning, didn't it, about who the EU trades with?
It did. The ECB, based in Frankfurt, Germany, basically warned that trading with dictators may result in the European Union funding threats to itself.
Funding threats to itself? How so?
Well, the concern is about the long-term consequences of doing business with authoritarian regimes. Does it inadvertently strengthen regimes that might later pose a security risk or undermine EU values? It raises that critical ethical question for economic policy. Do short-term economic gains outweigh potential long-term geopolitical risks?
A tough balance. And Germany itself is looking at its own defense posture, potentially bringing back something from the past.
Yes, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius outlined some emergency draft plans. They foresee the possibility of some military conscription in cases of need.
Conscription, like a draft.
Potentially, in emergencies. But the emphasis is also strongly on attracting more voluntary recruits to the German armed forces, the Bundeswehr. It reflects this renewed focus on military readiness in Germany, a country, remember, with a very complex history regarding military service. It's a clear sign they recognize the security landscape in Europe has changed dramatically.
And elsewhere, we're seeing a major humanitarian situation unfolding with Iran's immigration policies. A huge number of people being deported.
Yes, a staggering number. Nearly 500,000 Afghans have left Iran in just a month amid these mass deportations of undocumented migrants.
500,000 in a month. That's massive displacement. Why now?
Iran, which is a large country in the Middle East sharing a long border with Afghanistan, says it views undocumented migrants as a security threat. They've even accused them of spying for Israel, given the regional tensions. But the result is this very rapid, large-scale displacement, creating a huge humanitarian challenge for Afghanistan next door. And just to add to the diplomatic picture, Iran also recently rejected claims by former President Trump that they'd sought to relaunch nuclear talks. So ongoing friction with the U.S. there, too.
And tensions keep simmering in the Asia-Pacific as well, right? Between the Philippines and China.
Yes. The Philippines, an archipelago nation in Southeast Asia, recently summoned China's ambassador.
Why? What prompted that?
It was in response to sanctions Beijing imposed against a critical former Filipino senator. This just escalates tensions over sovereignty disputes, especially in the South China Sea, which is rich in resources and contested by both nations, among others. It's another example of the ongoing geopolitical jockeying for influence in that absolutely vital region. Maritime disputes are a constant flashpoint.
Okay, let's shift gears now. Moving from those often heavy geopolitical currents to maybe some cosmic whispers. Because here's where it gets really interesting, I think. From astronauts just doing their daily tasks hundreds of miles above us, to robots exploring what might be ancient lake beds on Mars. We're constantly pushing the boundaries of what we know about our universe and maybe our place in it. Let's dive into scientific frontiers and Earth's unfolding story, starting with adventures in space and maybe some stellar sightings.
Sounds good. And we do have some cool updates from the International Space Station, the ISS. NASA astronaut Johnny Kim was photographed working inside a SpaceX Dragon cargo spacecraft back on May 23rd, 2025. It was during his first mission up there. And it just highlights the ongoing teamwork, right? These routine cargo deliveries and maintenance missions are absolutely critical for keeping humans living and working in low Earth orbit long term. It's a real testament to the international cooperation needed to keep an outpost like the ISS running smoothly.
Absolutely. And speaking of outposts, our robot explorer on Mars, Curiosity, is still hard at work, making geological discoveries that tell us about the red planet's past.
Yeah.
Every rock seems to have a story.
It really does. NASA's Curiosity rover is still chugging along, exploring near Mount Sharp, that central peak inside Gale Crater. It's focusing on these resistant ridges and sort of rubbly trough-like terrain. Recently, it brushed a rock target they named Kopai and zapped another one called Taltal with its Chem instrument.
That's the laser thing, right? Vaporizes rock to see what it's made of.
Exactly. But what's really exciting is that Curiosity positioned itself near this feature called Volcan Peñablanca. It's about a 3-foot-high ridge, and it has these sedimentary structures that you just can't see clearly from orbit.
Ah, so ground-level details are key here. What might those structures tell us?
Scientists think this formation may reveal details about the planet's ancient depositional environments. That could mean things like ancient dunes, rivers, or even lakes.
Lakes on Mars. Wow. That would be huge for the search for past life.
Absolutely huge. It could provide crucial clues about whether Mars had liquid water for long periods. And if it had water, could it have harbored life? Finding evidence of an ancient lake bed would be like finding a geological Rosetta Stone on another planet.
Incredible. A potential glimpse into ancient Martian waterways. The implications are just profound. And looking even further out, the Hubble Space Telescope, the old reliable, keeps delivering amazing cosmic views and valuable data, doesn't it?
It really does. Year after year, stunning images and scientific breakthroughs. NASA's Hubble recently captured this vivid image of a variable star called V372 Orionis and its companion star. They're within the Orion Nebula.
The Orion Nebula. That's relatively close, cosmically speaking.
Relatively, yes. About 1,450 light years from Earth, right here in our Milky Way galaxy. Now, V372 Orionis is classified as an Orion variable. That means it's a young star, and its brightness changes irregularly.
Why does it do that? Is it unstable?
Pretty much. It's still in its developmental phase, gathering mass, settling down into its main life cycle. Studying these kinds of stars gives scientists really valuable insights into early stellar evolution and into the turbulent conditions inside stellar nurseries, those giant clouds of gas and dust where new stars are born. It helps us understand how stars like our own sun formed and evolved billions of years ago.
Okay, bringing it back down to Earth. We're not just looking up at the cosmos. We're digging down, unearthing ancient pasts, and also getting some, frankly, startling forecasts about Earth's future. Any new prehistoric creatures joining the menagerie? Maybe something airborne.
Funny you should ask. Yes, scientists have discovered a new species of pterosaur.
Pterosaur. Those are the flying reptiles, right? From the dinosaur age.
Exactly. This one soared above the dinosaurs more than 200 million years ago, back in the Triassic period. Finding new species like this gives us valuable insights into those prehistoric ecosystems, adds another fascinating piece to the puzzle of ancient life. Remember, these were the first vertebrates ever to achieve powered flight, way before birds.
Amazing. And archaeology keeps turning up wonders, too, things that make us rethink human history, from ancient tombs to what sounds like an ancient factory.
Absolutely. Down in Egypt, near Aswan, in the Aga Khan mausoleum area, they found a Greco-Roman tomb. It had a big 6-foot sarcophagus inside, discovered at the bottom of a forgotten staircase. It gives us insights into burial rituals during that period when Greek and Roman culture was mixing with ancient Egyptian traditions.
Okay, interesting. But the factory, 125,000 years old, that sounds incredible.
It really does. Archaeologists stumbled upon this site, Quesem Cave, in central Israel, being described as a 125,000-year-old factory. They found something like 120,000 bone fragments and 16,000 flint tools.
Whoa. That suggests really sophisticated tool-making, right? And much earlier than we might have thought.
Exactly. It suggests early humans, maybe Homo sapiens, maybe Neanderthals. They're not sure yet. We're doing sophisticated tool-making and maybe animal processing on an almost industrial scale, far earlier than previously believed. Shows their ingenuity and adaptability.
And then there's this other kind of discovery. A potential secret hidden in maybe the most famous drawing in history.
That sounds like a movie plot.
It really does. Apparently, a dentist, yes, a dentist, discovered what can be described as a hidden code in Leonardo da Vinci's iconic Vitruvian Man.
The Vitruvian Man, the drawing of the guy in the circle and square, from around 1490.
That's the one, representing human proportion, the link between art and science. This dentist supposedly found a third shape intricately woven into the artwork.
A third shape? What could that mean?
Well, it potentially offers a deeper understanding of Leonardo's intentions, maybe reinforcing that profound connection between art, science, and the human form that he was so obsessed with. It's just a cool reminder that even the most studied works might still hold secrets, waiting for a fresh eye, maybe even a dentist's eye, to spot them. Shifting from the past to our planet's future, there's a really concerning link being made now between climate change and volcanoes. That seems like an unexpected connection.
It does, doesn't it? But it's a stark reminder of how interconnected Earth's systems are. A study led by Pablo Moreno-Jaeger at the University of Wisconsin-Madison warns that the melting of glaciers and ice caps due to climate change could trigger a wave of volcanic eruptions.
How would that work? Melting ice makes volcanoes erupt.
The theory is about pressure. The immense weight of huge glaciers actually suppresses volcanic activity underneath them. As the glaciers melt and that weight is removed, it can allow magma to rise more easily, potentially leading to eruptions that are more frequent and possibly more explosive.
Wow. So climate change isn't just about sea levels and weather. It could have major geological impacts, too.
Exactly. It highlights these far-reaching geological consequences. And almost as if on cue, Indonesia's Mount Leotobi Laki-Laki, on the island of Flores in Southeast Asia, it started erupting again.
Seriously. Is it major?
It shot an ash cloud 18 kilometers that's over 11 miles into the sky. Residents nearby had to flee. Emergency responses are underway. A very real-world example right there.
Okay, let's move to the cutting edge now. Technological innovations and how they're impacting our lives, our industries. Talent seems to be a huge factor in AI right now.
Oh, absolutely. The competition for top AI minds is incredibly fierce. We just heard that Apple's head of AI models, Ruming Pang, is reportedly leaving the company to work at Meta.
Leaving Apple for Meta. That's a big move.
Yeah.
Zuckerberg's poaching talent.
It seems so. Mark Zuckerberg is apparently aggressively recruiting top people for his new AI superintelligence unit. It signals Meta's deep commitment, their aggressive push to compete head-on with giants like Google and OpenAI in advanced AI development.
And AI isn't just about building big models, is it? It's starting to creep into how we learn and collaborate, too.
Indeed. ChatGPT, the popular AI chatbot, is apparently testing a mysterious new feature called Study Together.
Study together, how would that work?
The goal seems to be enhancing collaborative study experiences, knowledge sharing. It could potentially transform how people learn, maybe brainstorm, tackle complex problems using AI, moving beyond just asking it for information.
And in sustainable tech, we're seeing some really out there ideas. Did I read something about a vegetarian rocket engine? For data centers.
You did. Frontier, a tech company, is collaborating with Arbor on developing exactly that. A vegetarian rocket engine to power data centers.
Okay, you have to explain that one. Vegetarian rocket.
Well, the details aren't fully clear from the source, but the idea seems to be using innovative, possibly biomass-derived or other sustainable fuel sources in a high-efficiency engine, maybe adapted from rocket tech, to provide clean power. It's an innovative approach trying to tackle the massive energy consumption of data centers, combining sustainable energy concepts with cutting-edge engineering.
Very creative. And the future of transport keeps rolling along towards autonomy. Now even teenagers can hail a robotaxi.
In some places, yes. Waymo, one that's the autonomous ride-hailing service from Google's parent company, Alphabet, is now allowing teenagers to hail a Waymo robotaxi in Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix is a major city in the southwestern U.S.
So self-driving cars becoming part of everyday life for younger people, too.
Exactly. It expands accessibility and signals growing public, or at least corporate, trust in the safety and reliability of the technology.
And finally, on the tech front, social media platforms are giving users a bit more control, which is always nice to hear.
Yes, Bluesky, the decentralized social platform, is letting users customize their notifications now.
So you can choose what you get alerts for. Likes, new followers from specific people.
Precisely. More control over the experience, maybe helping manage that constant information overload. And Mastodon, another decentralized platform, its latest update is preparing the app for, quote, posts, a feature familiar from other platforms and giving its design a bit of a revamp. Still trying to maintain its unique community feel while adding features users expect.
Okay, let's shift gears again, maybe to more sobering topics. Human impact, specifically looking at crises, health, and justice. These stories often bring the challenges we face as a society into really stark relief. And sadly, Texas in the U.S. has been hit by a truly catastrophic natural disaster recently. Yes, just devastating flash floods there. Tragically, reports indicate the death toll has climbed to more than 100 individuals. And search efforts are still continuing for 11 people missing from Camp Mystic, which is a summer camp located in the Texas Hill Country area.
Oh no, a summer camp involved. That's awful.
It's truly heartbreaking. Among the dead are reportedly 27 girls and counselors from that camp, as well as other young campers, teachers, and a football coach from affected communities. The stories emerging are just terrible. A hero dad, twin girls lost, riverside campers. It's a raw, painful reminder of nature's power and the immense human cost when disaster strikes like this.
And in the middle of all this tragedy, there was some political controversy too, wasn't there? Involving Senator Ted Cruz.
Yes, Senator Ted Cruz, who represents Texas, faced quite a bit of criticism. He was returning from a trip to Greece, the country in southern Europe, while his home state was battling these catastrophic floods.
The optics of that probably weren't great. Not at all. He did eventually fly back promptly, but the timing of his vacation sparked considerable public anger and debate about the responsibilities of elected officials during a crisis. And adding to the sort of social fallout, a Texas pediatrician was reportedly terminated from her position.
Why? What happened?
She apparently made a controversial post online about pro-Trump flood victims. The post seemed to imply that the victims got what they voted for.
Oh, wow. That would definitely spark outrage.
It did. Widespread public condemnation. It just highlights the intense political polarization, unfortunately, even when people are facing shared tragedy.
Turning to global health now, we're seeing some alarming trends, but also some really exciting breakthroughs that offer a lot of hope.
It's definitely a mixed bag. On the concerning side, measles cases in the U.S. have apparently hit a 33-year high.
33 years. Wow. Measles was supposed to be eliminated.
Pretty much. Outbreaks are spreading in various communities. It just underscores how critically important vaccination and strong public health measures are for preventing the comeback of these highly contagious diseases. But on a much more positive note, there's been a significant advance against a major global killer, malaria. The first malaria treatment specifically designed for babies has been approved for use. It's called Cortem Baby or Reigniting Baby.
Specifically for babies. Why is that so important?
Because infants are incredibly vulnerable. Children under 5 actually account for the vast majority of malaria deaths worldwide. So having a treatment tailored for them is a huge, significant advancement. It was developed by Novartis and the Medicines for Malaria Venture.
That's fantastic news. What about treatments for other conditions like hearing loss? Anything promising there? It always felt like such a permanent condition.
Well, there's some potentially groundbreaking news on that front. A breakthrough gene therapy jab has shown really promising results in reversing hearing loss in a small clinical trial.
Gene therapy for hearing loss. How does that work?
In this trial, it involved injecting a healthy copy of the OTOF gene into the inner ear.
The OTOF gene, what does that do?
Okay, so the OTOF gene is critical. It makes a protein called otoferlin. Think of otoferlin as like a tiny conductor in your inner ear. It allows the sound vibrations picked up by hair cells to be transmitted as electrical signals to your auditory nerve, which then goes to the brain.
Ah, so if that gene is faulty, the signal doesn't get sent, leading to deafness.
Exactly. So this gene therapy is basically delivering a correct blueprint, a healthy copy of the gene to fix that crucial step. It tries to reestablish the ear's ability to send those signals to the brain. And incredibly, all 10 participants in this small trial who had deafness due to faulty OTOF genes showed improved hearing after the treatment.
All 10? That's remarkable. Huge potential there.
Immense potential, yes, for people affected by specific types of inherited hearing loss. It's really exciting.
Now, on a more somber health note, there's new research about aging disparities. Differences in how quickly certain populations age.
Yes, this research reveals that South Asian women are aging faster than their counterparts in Europe and the United States.
Aging faster. What does that mean in practical terms?
It means they're experiencing aging-related health issues, things like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, maybe certain cognitive declines earlier in life and often more severely. It really highlights a critical need for focused healthcare interventions for this group. Culturally sensitive health education, more research into why this is happening, genetics, lifestyle, diet, environment. We need to ensure health outcomes are more equitable globally.
And Russia is facing its own big demographic challenge, isn't it? A fertility crisis with deep roots.
Yes. Russia, the world's largest country by area, is really grappling with a fertility crisis. The main driver is a sharp decline in the number of women of childbearing age.
Why the decline? Is it recent?
According to Deputy Prime Minister Tatyana Gulikova, it has roots going way back. She cited the aftereffects of World War II, which devastated the male population, and then the economic chaos of the 1990s after the Soviet Union collapsed. Both created demographic dips that are now being felt in the number of potential mothers.
So what's the government doing about it?
They've launched a big national project, Family. It includes things like financial aid for childbirth, expanded maternity benefits, and they've even revived the old Soviet-era Mother Heroine Award for women who have 10 or more children.
10 or more, wow. Any other strategies?
They're also apparently trying to discourage child-free lifestyles and offering tax incentives, trying various things to boost the birth rate. It's a major national effort to reverse a really concerning population trend.
Shifting to environmental health, there's a new, unfortunate title holder for the world's most polluted city, and it's in a surprisingly scenic place.
Yes, according to a Swiss air quality monitoring group, Bernhat, which is a small town in India's northeastern states of Assam and Meghalaya, has been named the world's most polluted city.
Despite being in a scenic, hilly region.
Exactly. It's a stark reminder that pollution isn't just a problem for massive megacities. Rapid industrialization, maybe lack of regulation, can create severe air quality problems anywhere with devastating health impacts for local people.
And healthcare systems themselves are under strain. In the UK, junior doctors are striking again.
Yes, resident doctors in England have again voted in favor of strike action. It's part of a really long-running pay dispute.
Didn't they just get a pay rise, though?
They did, 5.4% this financial year after getting about 22% over the previous 2 years. But they're still voting to strike. It signals persistent, deep dissatisfaction within the NHS workforce. It's probably about more than just the headline salary number, likely working conditions, workload, long-term career prospects, all things that ultimately impact public trust and patient care.
Okay, let's turn now to matters of justice, accountability, and public trust. Starting with that huge post office scandal that continues to unfold in the UK.
Yes, the official inquiry into the UK Post Office IT scandal is expected to release its findings soon, and it's set to lay bare the truly disastrous human impact. It's expected to highlight wholesale failure by the post office and the formidable difficulties victims faced trying to get compensation or clear their names.
This was the scandal where hundreds of local postmasters were wrongly accused of theft because of a faulty computer system, right? Horizon.
Exactly. Innocent people accused of theft, fraud, false accounting, lives were ruined. The inquiry report apparently even suggests the scandal may have led to 13 suicides among those wrongly accused.
13 suicides. Just devastating.
Utterly devastating. It shows the profound, tragic consequences when technological failures combine with institutional arrogance and a failure to listen. A total systemic failure by a public body.
And we also have a verdict in that quite bizarre, high-profile case from Australia involving poisonous mushrooms.
Yes, Erin Patterson has been found guilty of the Australian mushroom murders. She was convicted of killing her estranged husband's parents and his aunt, but serving them poisonous mushrooms at a family lunch. It concludes a really laborious legal process that, frankly, captured ghoulish fascination both in Australia and around the world. The BBC noted how the rural area where it happened, Leongatha, in regional Victoria, is still in shock. It underlines the impact such a strange and tragic event can have on a small community.
Now, a case that has generated endless debate and controversy, especially in the U.S., the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. What's the latest official word?
Well, the U.S. Justice Department and the FBI have now officially closed its investigation into the Jeffrey Epstein case. They stated that no further documents will be released, and importantly, they declared that a so-called client list does not exist.
The no client list exists. That contradicts what a lot of people expected or claimed, doesn't it?
It certainly contradicts previous assertions by some officials and many public figures who suggested such a list was coming. Adding to the controversy, the DOJ did release over 10 hours of surveillance footage from the night Epstein died in jail, officially ruled a suicide. But that footage didn't actually show his cell directly.
Which just fueled more doubts and speculation, presumably.
Absolutely. It intensified public skepticism about the transparency and maybe the completeness of the investigation. Critics like Elon Musk and Alex Jones voiced outrage, suggesting a lack of accountability, unanswered questions. The White House, for its part, defended withholding some materials, citing the presence of child pornography within them.
And what about all those prominent figures linked to Epstein over the years? Clinton, Trump, Prince Andrew.
While those figures and others were certainly linked to Epstein socially or through travel logs, the key point from the investigation's closure is that none have been formally accused of any crime in relation to Epstein's illicit activities. Though interestingly, some old tweets by J.D. Vance are apparently causing some trouble for Trump now, specifically in light of the Epstein client list controversy, showing how the political fallout just keeps going.
And finally, on the justice front, a major corruption crackdown seems to be underway in Russia, targeting high-ranking officials.
Yes, Colonel General Viktor Striganov, who was the former first deputy chief of Russia's National Guard, Rosgvardia, has been detained. The charges are embezzlement and corruption. He allegedly pushed ahead with a construction project back in 2014, knowing it wouldn't actually work, costing the state over 2 billion rubles. That's about $25 million.
And bribes, too.
Yes. Also accused of taking bribes totaling over 66 million rubles, which is around $840,000. This seems to be part of a broader crackdown happening alongside a recent big overhaul at Russia's defense ministry, which has seen several other high-profile arrests. Could be an internal power struggle or consolidation. And adding to the intrigue, Russia's transportation minister, Roman Starovoy, reportedly died by suicide just hours after getting fired by President Putin. That's also sparked investigations and raised questions about the immense pressures on top officials there right now.
Okay, after all that, let's definitely lighten the mood a bit. Some sports and cultural refreshers. Just a quick touch on these. What's happening in sports? Any drama at Wimbledon?
Always some drama at Wimbledon. The prestigious tennis tournament in London saw Grigor Dimitrov have to retire due to injury while he was actually leading against the top seed, Jannik Sinner. Tough break for Dimitrov. Sinner advanced to the quarterfinals, though he himself was apparently playing through an apparent arm injury. Speaks to how grueling Grand Slam tennis is. There's also a bit of tech controversy. A line call malfunction caused a point to be replayed in a match involving Taylor Fritz. Highlights those ongoing tensions between technology and human officiating in sports.
And in the NBA, the off-season buzz is starting. Big contracts, potential moves.
Definitely. Bradley Beal's potential buyout with the Phoenix Suns is generating anticipation. The Los Angeles Clippers are seen as frontrunners to sign him if he becomes available, which would be a major move. And Paolo Banchero just signed a massive extension with the Orlando Magic. A historic 5-year max extension worth up to $287 million. Richest deal in that team's history. Shows the huge value placed on young stars.
And sadly, some tragic news from the world of football.
Yes, unfortunately. Spanish police reported that speeding was the likely cause of the recent car crash involving Liverpool footballer Diogo Jota. The team has since returned to training after Jota's passing, which must be incredibly difficult for them. Just a somber note for the club and fans.
And on the culture and community side, a really famous historical artifact is making a big trip, spanning centuries.
Yes, this is quite exciting for history buffs. The Bayeux Tapestry, that incredible embroidered cloth from the 11th century depicting the Norman conquest of England, is set to return to the UK on loan after 900 years.
900 years. Wow. Where will it be displayed?
At the British Museum in London. It's a really rare chance to see this monumental piece of medieval history, which normally lives in Bayeux, France. A huge moment for cultural exchange.
And the UK is testing its emergency alert system again. Good to know.
Yes, the national system for sending emergency alerts to mobile phones will be tested again this September. Compatible phones will vibrate and make a loud siren sound for about 10 seconds, even if they're on silent. It's designed to make sure critical alerts reach everyone in a real national emergency, a vital public safety tool.
And finally, a quick but important travel tip for anyone flying in the UK soon regarding liquids in carry-on bags.
Yes, despite some rule changes at certain UK airports allowing larger liquid containers through security now, the general advice is still to assume 100 milliliter liquid limit remains.
So stick to the old rules to be safe.
Pretty much. Assume the 100 milliliter limit applies everywhere unless you're absolutely sure otherwise. Inconsistencies between airports could lead to delays, so it's better to just play it safe with those tiny bottles for now.
Okay, so wrapping things up,
what does all of this mean? We've covered a lot of ground today. We've seen this complex dance of global economics, haven't we? Nations challenging the existing financial order, trade policies, sending ripples everywhere. We've explored the enduring, tragic human cost of conflicts in places like Gaza and Ukraine. And we soared out to space and dug into the past, looking at the incredible pace of discovery that's pushing the boundaries of our understanding of the universe and ourselves. From nations seeking economic independence, to the fight against age-old diseases, to the ongoing pursuit of justice, our world is just in constant complex flux.
It really is. And it raises, I think, a really important question as we look across all these stories. In a world where global powers are actively reshaping alliances and economic systems, where technology is advancing at just lightning speed, how do we balance that pursuit of progress? How do we balance it with the absolute imperative of human rights and environmental protection? The push for critical minerals for our batteries, the shifts in global financial power, the ethical dilemmas around AI development, the devastating human cost of conflict. They all seem to converge on this central challenge. How do we actually build a future that's both sustainable and equitable?
That's a huge question, and maybe consider this as we finish. As the world perhaps fragments into these new economic blocks, and as technological breakthroughs redefine our daily lives, how might these shifts, everything from digital currencies to AI learning to digging minerals from the deep sea, how might they fundamentally alter not just our economies, but maybe our global values, our very sense of shared humanity? The way we navigate these challenges today will absolutely shape the world we live in tomorrow. Keep those sources coming our way, and we'll keep diving deep to help you stay well informed.